Hi, Herbert Lee here. Welcome to another series. This is the series, Do You Make These Mistakes Learning English? Watch the video till the very end. You're going to get some really valuable tips on how you can correct how you're learning English. How you learn English is very important. You may have been learning English for many, many years, but you haven't been doing it correctly, and that's slowing you down. So watch the entire video to get all the tips. Better still, watch the entire series of 7 to get all the tips. And then, the most important part is apply what you learn. Learn and do. Don't just watch the videos and say, hey, that's a nice idea. I might want to try that. Don't try. Actually do it. Also, do me a favor. After you've tried the technique, after you've used these tips to actually improve how you learn English, leave your comments in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you. And if you really find these videos useful, click on the subscribe button to make sure you get all the updates. Today I'm going to talk about something that's a little bit controversial, and this may upset some of you. I'm putting on my dangerous hat. I'm telling you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. What you want to hear is, yes, you can learn English in 3 weeks without any effort. Sorry guys, if you think that's true, you better go look somewhere else. And I'm sure even when you look somewhere else, you're not going to find it. Today, the topic is why traditional English classes fail at making students fluent in English. You still hear students saying, I've been studying for 10 years, 15 years at English class, and I still can't speak English well. You got to think about it. Maybe it's the material. When I first started teaching, way back in Canada, I was teaching photography. A very experienced teacher told me, first thing you need to know about teaching is this. Teach the student, not the material. Teach the student, not the material. Unfortunately, the industry, the English language learning materials industry, is so focused on producing so much material, and schools and institutions are so hungry to produce a consistent product, something that every student can learn the same, that they have made it ineffective and useless for the student. You know that the English language learning publishing industry, wow, that's a mouthful. The English language learning publishing industry is huge. It's a monster. It produces so much material every year, new material for all the new students who want to learn English and become fluent in speaking English. If you look at the English book publishing industry, and I'm talking about English learning materials, you're going to see that a lot of them are very, very similar. Each company copies the other company. There's not much original coming out. And even when they say authentic material, real life English, a lot of it is still written like it's written English, not like oral English. And it's not modern English. It's not English that we use every day. Sorry, but they're just producing a lot of stuff. And I know that because when I first started teaching over 15 years ago, I went and I looked at all the material that was available. And I have to tell you, I looked at hundreds of materials, books, software, videos, recordings, learning packages, and I found much less than 5% of the material actually taught students fluency. 95% were focused on the tradition of reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And I might add, a lot of time was spent on reading and writing, and very little was spent on listening and speaking. Because frankly, English teachers don't like teaching listening and speaking. It's not easy to teach people how to listen and teach people how to speak. So, before my first class, I spent an entire weekend at every library, pouring through every book I could get my hands on, and then I developed some new materials and new approaches to help people really become fluent. And that's what helped me and helped my students become fluent in English in a much shorter period of time. So my recommendation to you is, hey, if you're studying at an English school, great, keep going. But don't use it as your only source of learning. And try to get into the real world. You could, if you had small classes of up to 6 people, you could really have a class to focus on fluency. Most schools and institutions have large classes, 25, 30, 45 students. You can't really teach oral fluency in that size group. If you can afford it, you should get a teacher who's good at teaching fluency and get a group of 4 to 6 people every week together and learn how to be fluent by practicing with each other. Even one-on-one I found is not very useful. You can only talk to someone about certain things for an hour for so long, and then there's not much else to talk about, okay? Because it's a very artificial conversation. Practice with real people and practice conversation, not practicing speaking. Speaking is only one thing. You need to speak and then you need to listen. That's a conversation. In fact, conversation should be about 60% of you listening, 40% of you talking. And if you're always saying, excuse me, can you say that again? Or excuse me, can you say that a little bit slower? Not many people will want to talk to you. And that's why I tell people, really get good at listening. Listening is fundamental if you want to become a fluent English speaker. You need to find real-world experiences. You need to have exercises, and I'm going to give you some later in this series, exercises that will actually help you go out in the real world and practice speaking and listening to real English. And you need to spend time observing, listening to other speakers, picking up vocabulary, picking up collocations, picking up phrasal verbs from what they say, and then using it in your speech and your speaking. That's really how you become fluent. Not going to English class when you feel like it. You've got to get serious. It's not a hobby. You've got to make it an obsession. And then it can become a profession, and then you'll become very, very fluent in English. That's all for now. See you in episode 4.